Since I was 12 years old, I've committed my life to Jesus. I definitely don't know what being a Christian is figured out, but what I do know is we don't always know the ending, and that can scare us. But God knows the end of your story, and he's already at work redeeming it. From the age of 8 years old, I already had my entire future mapped out. I was going to compete in college gymnastics, D1, full ride scholarship, the sparkly leotards, everything. As I grew, so did my dream. I worked my way up in skills, eventually joining a great team in junior high, and in 8th grade, I placed first in NorCal at state. And I felt really excited about my future. I truly loved the sport, and I was successful. But when I started high school, I was immediately hit with a back injury that was long and exhausting. Then sophomore year, I had a concussion and was in a really low place mentally and in my faith. I kept going. I told myself and my coaches that I had more to give and more to prove to myself. By April of that year, many things started to improve. And then on April 25th, 2024, I was doing a skill on beam and felt a snap in my elbow. I audibly heard it, was immediately in a lot of pain, and I knew that something was wrong. I immediately asked the question of why me? I asked God over and over again why this was happening to me and why I couldn't just be happy and healthy. I tried to convince myself it wasn't anything bad and I was just being dramatic, but after seeing a new doctor, I found out that I had torn my UCL. I was terrified and absolutely devastated, but did my best to focus on maintaining a really positive attitude and just focusing on doing what I could to get better. I began my journey of rehab and met Dr. Ryan Ting. A couple of weeks later, I went back to practice, and it was like I was never even gone. Some of my coaches didn't even ask me how I was doing or how my arm felt, and I felt invisible. Over that summer, though, I formed a strong bond with Ryan, and I started interning at RNA. I worked really hard to regain my strength and the full use of my arm. It was hard and at some moments scary, but I was so determined to get healthy and still achieve my goals of competing the next season. I was still chasing that scholarship. But every day I went into practice, I felt more unseen, unvalued, and unloved. I had already dealt with challenges in the environment I was in, but this injury exacerbated it. My anxiety, which is something that I had experienced every single day before practice, usually as soon as I woke up in the morning, had gotten increasingly worse. It had got to the point that I was so anxious before practice every day that I would sob to the point that I felt like I couldn't breathe. I would cry before, sometimes during, and sometimes after practice. I knew that Jesus promises us peace, but I didn't feel it, and it was destroying me. I remember one day I made up an excuse that I'd forgotten at something at home, and I drove back home before practice. When I got home, I said to my mom, "I can't do this anymore, I'm done." Those words didn't even feel real. Like Pastor Marcus has been talking about, I was tired of striving, being in pain, putting my value in achievement and hoping that I would get approval. I felt stuck in an exhausting cycle. I said that at the end of the month I was done, but I don't think my mom really thought that I meant it, and I don't think I believed it either. 1 month later, on September 30th, I put my hair up in a bun and my leotard on for the very last time. And just like that, I was done. My dreams felt crushed, and the kingdom that I had built for myself shattered. For those of you who don't know me, my mom and I actually moved to the Bay Area to pursue my dream of D1 gymnastics. My family had sacrificed everything for me to be here, and in that moment, I felt like I had failed them and myself. I remember when I told Ryan, I felt like I failed. He said to me, "You didn't fail. I'm proud of you because you gave it all you had and are making the best decision for your health." I thought that after I would quit, everything would get better. I continued to try and resolve my issues in my own strength, but instead I felt empty and devastated. I truly was mourning the death of a dream. I had put absolutely everything I had into the sport, and I didn't understand why if God had gifted me with that ability, and I wanted it so badly, I couldn't achieve my dream. I felt like all the time, the things I had sacrificed, all the hard work, and all the physical pain had been a waste. I remember just asking God, "What are you doing?" and questioning how things were going to get better. I also felt really alone and isolated during this time. I was removed from my community of teammates. Things were tense with my mom because she was grieving for me, and I didn't really talk to my friends about what was going on because I felt like they wouldn't understand. And maybe for you, it wasn't D1 gymnastics. Maybe in a disappointment of not getting into a school, not making it on a team or a relationship that didn't work out. We all face disappointment. We all know what brokenness feels like. For months, I couldn't even look at pictures or videos without crying, and I spent a lot of time in my room in tears because I felt heartbroken. But here's the thing, God was not absent during that time. The Bible says, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." He met me in little moments and reminded me of his goodness and faithfulness. I needed to surrender, and God vividly brought this up over and over. About a week after my last day, I was listening to the song At the Altar on my way home. I remember hearing the verse, "Lay all your broken dreams at the altar," and it completely struck me. That theme of surrender wouldn't leave. A couple weeks later at the FCA worship night, same theme, I wrote on a sticky note, "Jesus, today I surrender to you my broken dreams," and I stuck it to the cross. At my internship, I got to use what I had learned in gymnastics to help other young gymnasts, and it reminded me that all my hard work hadn't gone to waste. It was just being used differently and maybe even in a better way. After about 5 months of walking through grief, I went to the Valley Spiritual Retreat in February. On the first day, Pastor Anna gave us a prompt to write on our note card. I honestly don't even remember what the prompt was, but I remember what I wrote. "I am struggling because I don't believe that the plans God has for my life could possibly be as amazing as the plans I had for myself." And in that moment, I realized that's why I was struggling so badly. I had always said and heard others say God has a plan for us, and I believed that, but deep down, I didn't really believe that his plan could be as good as mine because mine seemed pretty great. That sentence kept running through my head the rest of the day. Later, during small groups, we were all sharing about what God was doing in our lives. I decided to share what I had been going through, even though I was still in my pain. It wasn't easy to be vulnerable, but something that I felt like I needed to do. For weeks leading up to the retreat, God had been placing the word joy in my heart. Even Pastor Marcus's message that weekend tied back to that word. The next morning, I received Barnabas cards, and I still have all of them today. Mrs. Eastman wrote, "Just getting started." And I remember thinking, wait, yeah, I'm only 17. I have so much ahead of me. And I want to encourage you in this, that if you still have breath in your lungs, then God is not done with you yet. Then I read a note from Zada, who graduated last year. She wrote, "As you were sharing your testimony, I saw you preaching in front of people, a large group of people. Your testimony is powerful." That moment changed something in me. I realized that God wasn't done, he was just beginning, that he could take my brokenness and turn it into something beautiful. It hit me that my story wasn't over and that God could use it for his glory. And now standing here today, sharing this story in front of all of you, I can see how faithful he has been and how he really does turn mourning into joy. And I don't want you to think that means everything's perfect now. I still feel sad sometimes when I see pictures or when I watch my friends still competing. I still miss the sport that I love so much. But I've learned that even in that sadness, I can surrender all. God's presence is enough. He is writing a story that's so much better than mine could have ever been. And here's the thing, I tried to make this sound, put it together, lay it out clearly, but in reality it wasn't. It was sporadic and messy. In the beginning, I thought surrendering was like I would hand my brokenness to Jesus and immediately move forward, but it wasn't like that. Some days I felt strong, and other days I felt like I was right back where I started. We talk a lot about how we surrender our lives to Jesus and we are saved, but we don't talk about the fact that something like this is a daily surrender. It is picking up your cross daily. I had to give it to God every day for months, but little by little, he put the pieces back together and gave me hope. For me, surrendering my brokenness to Jesus meant loosening my grip on the future I had been holding on to so tightly, no longer carrying that burden around all the time, and not trying to figure out how I was going to turn around it, because God turned it around, and I don't know how he did, but he did it. It meant getting a sense of peace and joy back that I felt like had been a fight to feel for 3 years. My joy is now not dependent on my circumstances, but solely rooted and anchored in Jesus. My identity shifted from who am I to who do I belong to. I may not have it all figured out, and I still don't know what my future holds, but I now feel so secure in knowing this: God would never let the thing I lost be the best that I ever have. So here's a few things I want to leave you with. Your joy isn't in your circumstances, it is in him. We know the empty feeling we have when we chase these worldly things. When we anchor our trust fully in Jesus, our joy is steady, our peace is unshakable, and our hope is secure. Sometimes God allows seasons of pain to turn into purpose and brokenness into beauty. My elbow injury could have just been a setback, something that took away a part of me that I loved, but God used it to open a door I never could have imagined. So much goodness came from it. That season, that struggle became a season of growth, confidence, and purpose. And here's the thing, if you believe that God is truly the author of your story, I want to end by re-emphasizing this: your story is not over. We don't always know the ending, and that scares us. But God knows the end of your story, and he is already at work redeeming it. I've seen him do it in my own life, turning disappointment into opportunity, struggle into growth, and pain into purpose. In the last year, I've been able to step into spaces I'd never imagined, to show up for people in ways I didn't think were possible, and to walk forward with a confidence and hope that I didn't have before. Your story isn't over, and the God who sees the ending is working all things together for your good, even when you can't see it yet. So maybe today, the call is to surrender, to let go of the need to control the story and trust the author of your life. It is to remain faithful even when the season is hard, even when it feels unfair, and even when you don't see a way forward. We can look to the cross and trust God always has been and always will remain faithful. One day, we will look back to see that nothing was wasted or random, and every season of our lives are part of his perfect plan to bring beauty, purpose, and redemption. Thank you.